Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to be talking to you about intermittent fasting, in particular the 18-6. I made a similar video over a year ago, so if you've not seen it, go check that out. Basically, I'm still doing intermittent fasting, still doing the 18-6 pretty much. Now I'm older, wiser, and have more experience that I want to share with you guys today. In this video, I'm going to tell you some benefits of intermittent fasting. I'm going to give you some tips to make intermittent fasting easier for you and some tips to make it easier to begin intermittent fasting. I'm also going to share some of my personal experiences and basically just reflections on intermittent fasting as a whole. Is it really good for weight loss? Is it a miracle cure for loads of different things, or what? The first benefit of intermittent fasting is saving time and saving worry. Intermittent fasting basically means you're going to eat less in a smaller eating window. So obviously, if you don't eat at a time when previously you were eating, you're going to save time. This time also extends to periods after the meal when you are either digesting the meal or you feel a certain way because you've eaten the meal. For example, if you have a big breakfast, then you might not immediately be able to start working out after breakfast. You might have to also leave some time to digest the food. So saving time can seem quite obvious. The worry point is more what I wanted to talk about in this video. It's definitely something that I've personally noticed when I'm working and I have a very specific set time for lunch. Often before I started fasting, I would feel at that lunch window I really needed to eat as much as I possibly could because it was going to be the only break that I was going to get in the whole day. So if I didn't eat then, I was going to be hungry afterwards. And it actually gave me, I wouldn't say anxiety over worrying about being hungry, but I definitely wanted to maximize my time when I was going to be allowed to eat. I definitely didn't want to be in the afternoon hungry. Now, this might work for some people, but for me, when I was doing rehearsals, because I'm a circus performer, it's always physical. So we would be finishing this lunch break and I'd be going straight into a very physical exercise, a physical thing, and it just never worked. I was always stuffed full, I never had the proper energy and all of that stuff. That whole entire problem obviously is solved by fasting. And it's not just because, oh, now you're not having lunch at all, so you don't need to worry about having too much lunch. I would say it's more about developing a better relationship with food and understanding your body more. This leads me on to the next benefit, which is understanding the body more. As I just said, I always used to rush meals. I used to stuff myself just to make sure that I was getting all the energy and the nutrition that I would need. And by understanding the body, I mean that you can understand what foods are gonna make you feel a certain way better when you begin fasting. At least that's been my personal experience of it. I can now understand far better how to link the way that I feel and the way that I want to feel after having food with the food that's gonna make me feel like that. So now it's not necessarily the more the better. I can understand that I only need a certain amount to feel a certain way. And the only way to understand this is to strip everything back, have a completely blank slate, empty stomach, and then add one food and see how that one food makes you feel. I found it's far easier to be satiated and satisfied with food once I'm used to fasting and I've gotten out of the habit of just eating loads all the time. Now, for lunch times, for example, I could easily just eat maybe a banana, piece of fruit, and I can wait and then see how that affects me. And if I need more calories, more energy, then I could have that. But I know I don't need all of that at one time in a huge amount because I'm far better able to understand how that's going to make me feel. Some of this is self-explanatory when you think about a lot of us have been raised and just have been used to waking up, eating breakfast, having a snack, having lunch, etc, etc. So it's easy to say, oh yeah, obviously if you start with nothing and you have one thing, then you're going to be able to feel what that thing does to you, It's just a banana inside you, so you know exactly what a banana does, how much energy one banana gives you. But my point is, we actually rarely experience experience what it's like to have that blank slate. Unless you experiment with intermittent fasting, pretty much always digesting something. Most of us, if you don't fast, are only a few hours since your last snack or your last meal. When you begin experimenting with fasting, you're gonna be able to experience foods in a different way to how you did previously. I personally love experimenting with different diets. So another similar example, which isn't directly linked to fasting, was when I experimented with the ketogenic diet. And this was a few years ago, but essentially what I did was I did it badly and I did not include a fiber supplement or foods with enough fiber on. So basically, I felt for the first time in my life what it feels like to not have enough fiber. So obviously it's easy to read, oh, fiber does this to you, it makes you feel like this, gives you energy. But unless you actually feel it for yourself, you're gonna be sort of comprehending it on a different level. You won't have that direct experience. So a tip to help you get into intermittent fasting, what I would say is always start really slowly. Often you want to start and you want to jump straight in. You know, I started with 16/8 and even that was quite a big challenge initially. It didn't really feel like it was a sustainable thing at first. It felt like a really tough challenge. And to be honest, I would maybe even recommend starting in an easier way than just jumping into it. I'm going to do 16/8 for a month, or I'm going to do 18/6 straight away for a couple of weeks. Instead, I would just try like a day or a couple of days where you incrementally push back the time that you break the fast or have your first meal. For example, you could wake up and instead of having breakfast and going to do your workout or your yoga session, you do your workout and then you have breakfast. So it might only be an hour or so later, but this is a good way to start and also to feel how you are with no food inside you. It might be a pleasant surprise when you're in the gym and you actually feel you do have energy. The Christmas example I thought would be a pretty relevant one because obviously Christmas is coming up. I don't know how many of you do this. I personally, and a lot of people I knew before fasting, would wake up on Christmas Day really late and just eat lunch, you know, save yourself till lunch. Felt like, you know, I don't want to eat much because I want to have as much room for turkey and all of that stuff. And this unwittingly could be a good way to get into fasting, like just to try it out. If you can do that, there's no reason why you can't do it on other days. And I think the biggest barrier for people starting intermittent fasting is just this idea that it's such a crazy, like, hard thing to get into when it really is not. It just takes time to get used to it, but you do get used to it, and you also don't have to jump in at the deep end straight away. Definitely, if you want to experiment with intermittent fasting or anything like that, just start really slow and then slowly build up as you feel comfortable. Now I've been doing fasting on and off for probably over 5 years. I feel like I can reflect back on the whole journey and see how effective really was it for weight loss. If I'm being completely honest, I jumped into intermittent fasting as the sole measure to lose weight initially. I went straight into the 16/8 and did it very strictly and begun to lose a bit of weight. I then have had many periods over the years where I've gone down in weight, I've gone up in weight, gone down in weight, and now actually over the last 2 years where I've been doing 18/6-ish pretty consistently, I have maintained my weight. But I do now think, to be honest, intermittent fasting shouldn't really be seen as a weight loss miracle solution, and I would maybe be inclined to think that it is a brilliant measure for helping lose weight, helping control calorie intake, helping regulate your day, your energy, and all of these things, but it's not on its own a miracle solution. And I think all of these things should be used in combination with other things. Obvious example, if you're trying to lose weight and you're just intermittent fasting and not doing exercise, I think you should consider adding some exercise to your routine, even if it's just 10,000 steps a day or 5,000 steps a day, depending on where you are at the moment. Secondly, I do think it's probably possible to intermittent fast while consuming way too many calories and still putting on weight. Maybe you're going to be putting on weight at a slower rate than if you weren't fasting, but still, I think if you're really serious about losing weight, you should have some idea of calorie control or calorie counting while you're doing the fasting. There's this idea that I first subscribed to, that when you do intermittent fasting, you can eat anything, you can eat as much of it as you want. It doesn't matter because the fasting window is this magical thing where you can never add any weight on. And then you'll see some study that they did in rats about 100 years ago where the rats didn't put on any weight. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's probably better to go less extreme on the fasting in terms of yourself, what feels extreme to you, and also include simple measures like every day I'm gonna do 30 minutes of exercise, or every day I'm gonna wear a little Fitbit and I'm gonna do 10,000 steps, and when it buzzes I don't have to walk around anymore. I also think you should be mindful of your diet while intermittent fasting if you're trying to lose weight and be healthy and you're serious about that. Obviously, the counterpoint here is simplicity is usually a major reason why people were drawn to fasting. Basically, calorie counting and looking at every meal at the back of the packs and writing it on your phone, all these things are really a lot of effort. And that's why I think ideally you need to find the solution that works best for you. Personally, I just wear the Fitbit, and when it buzzes, and I know that I've done 10,000 steps, and that's great. I also have my fasting window starting at 7 p.m. every day, pretty much. So that's another easy thing that I don't really have to think about, you know. This is just gonna buzz and I'm gonna eat at 7, and that's just that. I don't feel like either of those two measures really add much effort to my day. And to tell you the truth, I do not calorie count. I do it intuitively, and I'm probably not the best at doing that. I have had periods of time where I do look at the packets and I do look at the foods and understand which foods might contain hidden calories that are more than I expect, etc. And I do think that experience has contributed to helping me now do it intuitively. In general, if you're just pretty much having one big meal, then just look for decent foods to go in that, like nice vegetables and not freeze-dried, you know, noodles or whatever. And then if you want to have snacks after that, just buy healthier snacks. Like, don't buy cookies and donuts, buy like dark chocolate or dark chocolate on a cornbread. That's like my go-to snack these days. So I know that might seem a little bit conflicting, but I do think it's fair to not treat intermittent fasting as like a miraculous thing. I do think it's really good, but like everything, it's not usually a black and white issue. It's not usually just this thing or just that thing. You've got to sort of look at the whole picture, but certain things like intermittent fasting, like ensuring you do exercise, are all quite key, in my opinion, to be aware of and to be aware that the things can work together. It's not just one or the other. Another thing that I've noticed is that intermittent fasting can actually be quite adaptable to different schedules. I'm a circus performer and I work usually at night, but my schedule can change. Sometimes I work in the afternoon, sometimes in the morning, and when I work, it's usually pretty physical. So there are definitely occasions where I need to eat before I would usually break the fast at around 7 p.m. And for example, if the show itself was at 7, I would want to eat with enough time to make sure that I've not got food weighing me down or, you know, anything like that. So I can find myself sometimes breaking the fast at around 4 p.m, sometimes even before that. And usually what I would do is have a very simple food like a banana or a sandwich. I would allow that to digest probably for at least an hour, and then if I want, I would have another simple thing like a bar, like an oat bar or something like that. And I found that that's more than enough to keep me going through the show, and I would have still the majority of my food after the show. That's just a personal preference. I know it's not great to eat too late in the evening and too close to when you're going to sleep, and that is something that I'm personally looking to work on, but it is quite hard as well when you do work late. The point is, I was worried that maybe I wouldn't be able to take food earlier because I'd gotten so used to eating late, but actually I found it very manageable. Sometimes, if I wanted to, I feel like I could wake up, have a nice breakfast, and have a normal day of eating if I wanted. Basically, the point is, I thought it was going to be much harder to force myself to eat earlier, and maybe it was going to make me feel weird because now I was used to eating late at a certain time. But actually I was wrong. It's much easier than I thought, and it was actually doing this that led me to understand the first point that I made about really feeling what one simple food can do for you in terms of energy or nutrients, etc. As usual, guys, I'm not a doctor or a scientist. I don't actually have any relevant qualifications, so don't listen to what I say. Do your own research, take everything I say with a pinch of salt, etc.